I knew there was an opportunity. I knew that I just needed to be consistent. And I was building a pipeline. I was having conversations with sellers, and I was tracking leads in my CRM, which was Podio, and I was building a little bit of a pipeline. In 2020, I bought like 6 or 7 properties. I was going to flip them, but I was buying from wholesalers, and I got tired of paying. Basically, I looked back at a year, I did a little spreadsheet, and I was like, what am I into these properties for at the end of the day? And I was into all of them at like 80 cents on the dollar. And I was like, man, I don't know. Like, I think there's probably a better way to do this. Why don't I become the wholesaler? Well, I can market directly to sellers. And quite frankly, I've got sales training, so I could probably do well in B2C sales. Why not give that a shot? So that's kind of how I started doing my first direct to seller marketing. And it was Q2 and Q3 of 2020. I kind of helped my wife wind down. She had a pediatric practice for 3 years. She wanted to stay at home full time, had some medical issues that she wanted to stay home for. And so I kind of looked back and I thought, I guess I kind of had an epiphany. I was like, I love real estate investing. I know that. And I love sales. So if you love those two things, the perfect combination of those two skill sets is ultimately wholesaling. Because wholesaling is ultimately, any wholesaler that owns a wholesaling business, and I saw a question earlier from a gentleman about, is it a sustainable business? I totally think it is. But it is a sales business. It is a selling company. Barbara, thanks for your question. I'm in Augusta, Georgia. I should have mentioned that. I do have a Masters polo on and a Masters tumbler, so that way you can remember Augusta, Georgia. So I ultimately realized that kind of what the Lord was doing in my life, he was calling me out of Paul Myers, the successful real estate investor, Paul Myers, the successful salesperson, to being a sales leader and leading others, and then also, being a business owner and an entrepreneur. So that's when I launched my company, Myers House Buyers. And I launched in November of 2020. So that's a year and a half ago. And it was really hard. So I wrote down some numbers for you guys. October 30th, 2020, I spent my first $6,000 on marketing. I mailed 2,000 letters with a company called Print Centers, but I think they were called Yellow Letters HQ at the time. And I did that for 3 months. So it was 2,000 letters a month for 3 months. Then on January 7th of 2021, a couple months later, I spent another $1,215. Then on February 10th, 2021, I spent another $7,500. So I'm out of pocket, just under 15 grand in the hole. And those entire 5 months, November 1st to March 31st of 2021, I didn't do a single deal. And it was very hard, very discouraging. I had one team member, he was a lead manager, but he was commission only. So he and I were just kind of in it together. We were in the slums together.
Was he there through all those slums of 4 months of not getting paid as the lead manager?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, he really wanted to hire me to do some real estate investment coaching with him. His name is Andre, wonderful guy. I knew him from church. And so I gave him a lot of coaching for free because I had spent 13 years at that point buying rentals. And that's what he was wanting to learn about. How do I help, invest in rentals? So anyway, so when I met Deal Machine, essentially I was at rock bottom.
It was not good. I'm 15K deep. And I think that's the scary story for a lot of people as they get into investing and they hear what to get started with. It's David's story, similar to, like, he wasted a bunch of money on like big like absentee owner lists and just like generic marketing that everyone else did. And it can feel intimidating when you're like, I only got 5,000 to get started. To hear 15K deep with no results, it's a scary thing to think about.
It is. It definitely takes courage to be an entrepreneur, but I had faith. I had done a little bit of direct to seller marketing like in 2016, 5 years earlier, when I worked when I had a corporate job, and I did 2 wholesale deals during that time. So I knew there was an opportunity. I knew that I just needed to be consistent. And I was building a pipeline. I was having conversations with sellers, and I was tracking leads in my CRM, which was Podio, and I was building a little bit of a pipeline. But I'll tell you where it all changed for me. I don't think I've told either of y'all this story, but I went into my weekly sales training with a friend of mine. His name is Victor. And, I told him what I'd dropped 15 grand on marketing over the last 5 months. And he was like, Paul, and we had this relationship, and I had enough intellectual humility, I guess, to hear it from him at the time, by God's grace. And he said, I bet if you abandoned, he didn't know what Deal Machine was, nor did I. He said, I bet if you abandoned your high equity list and you just drove around your city in Augusta and you just looked at, you just found distressed properties, you could mail those directly, handwrite the letters, skip trace and cold call the sellers, and do better than you're doing now, which of course that was true because I hadn't done any revenue, right? So it wasn't that much of a clairvoyant prediction, but that's what he said. And I was at a low point that where I was, who was I to question his suggestion? And by the way, he was a landlord. He owned a few handfuls of rentals too. So he kind of smacked me upside the head.